Anthony and welcome to the channel. On today's episode we're going to be doing brakes on my 2016 GT350. I swapped the brakes over to the 2019 and up updated brakes for a track day at Sebring last month, and I'm going to be switching them back to the stock brakes. The differences between the two are the 2019 and up have the non-drilled ventilated rotors, so this increases the surface area for which to brake with. It was found that the drilled holes not only produce a weak spot in the rotor itself, but also less surface area also equates to less stopping power. The added effect of cooling was a minimal difference, so that's why Ford made the switch. And unless you're running slicks, there's really no, or a professional driver, there's really no need to upgrade from the OEM pads or rotors, as the tire is really going to be ultimately determine your stopping distance. You can have an upgraded pad and rotor if you want, but if you don't have the tire to put the added traction and stopping power to the ground, it's really just a waste of money. So I am not a professional. I just go out there and have some fun. So that is why I stuck with the OEM parts. So while these might not be new parts that I'm putting back on the car, the process will be the same. So we're going to start with the front brakes. First thing you're going to need to do is remove the front wheels. Once you remove the front wheel, you're going to want to go ahead and take one of your lugs and put it back on one of the studs so that when you remove the caliper, the rotor doesn't actually fall off. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the pins in the caliper to remove the retaining brackets that hold the brake pads in the caliper. So in order to remove the pins, you take a hammer and tap them out until they're flush with the caliper. Then you can take a punch, it's smaller diameter, then we can go ahead and turn the entire rotor and caliper assembly. And using a pair of pliers, just grab the pin and you can slide it out the rest of the way. Just go ahead and set those to the side. Next, we're actually going to remove the caliper with the brake pads installed in, as you cannot replace the brake pads in this fixed caliper design due to the bridge right here. So in order to release the caliper from the knuckle, there's two large T60 bolts that you have to release. You want to be careful. Once you get them released, you're going to want to maintain positive control of the caliper, so just make sure you have a hand on it when you're releasing the last bolt. Because now that the pins are out of the caliper, there's nothing holding the brake pads in the caliper. Go ahead and take the last bolt out and set it to the side. Then you can remove the caliper. Like I said, you want to just tuck your fingers in and catch the brake pads and make sure they come off with the caliper. And then there's your brake pads. You can go ahead and remove those. And then make sure you have a bungee cord that you can go ahead and fish through the caliper, so that the caliper isn't being supported by its weight on the brake line, as this can damage the brake line. And then just kind of attach the bungee cord up on the spring or something, just to get it out of the way and support the weight. Next, we can go ahead and remove the rotor. We're just going to release the lug that we had on the stud. Keep your hand on the hat of the rotor. And then take it off the studs. So here we have our stock OEM 2016 rotor. As you can see, it has the holes in it. Just line the rotor up with the studs, and then put your lug back on to maintain its position. When you are doing the front brakes specifically on this car, you need to make sure you have the rotor on the proper side. The front rotors are directional. So in other words, the cooling of the ventilation only works in one direction. So you kind of want to make sure, if you're looking at the rotor and you've got the front of the car on the left of you, or at least on the driver's side, you want the curvature of the holes to be towards the rear, and as you're looking at the rotor, you want the vanes to be coming more or less towards you. Once we've got the rotor secured to the hub, now we can go ahead and install our new brake pads in our caliper and reinstall the caliper. So now we've got the rotor installed, go ahead and take the caliper. Go ahead and release the bungee cord. And before we install the new pads, we're going to go ahead and depress the caliper pistons. So for that, you're going to need a caliper compressor tool. Just want to get it lined up so that the pad of the compressor touches all the pistons. So now we can go ahead and install the pads into the caliper. And then you kind of just want to keep the pads as far and flush to the pistons as possible. Just kind of stick your finger and thumb in the back side. So that they can go over the rotor. Once it's on the rotor, you can let go of them. And then you're going to line up your caliper studs. So the repair instructions actually say these studs need to be replaced, but they are steel, and the only thing that makes them not reusable is the fact that the Loctite wears out. So if you just apply some blue Loctite, you can go ahead and reuse these. This is the 4th time these brakes have come on and off this car, and these are the original caliper studs. I've never had an issue with the caliper coming loose or anything like that. Once you've started the caliper studs by hand, go ahead and ratchet them down. We'll tighten the studs down until they're both flush with the caliper. And once that happens, you can go ahead and turn them another quarter turn or so. And that's all you really need to do to tighten them up. Now we can go ahead and reinstall the caliper brake pad retaining pins. In order to do that, you want to compress, you want to reach back here and push the brake pad back towards the back of the caliper to allow the first hole to line up with the hole in the caliper. And then just kind of work it through, and then use the same technique to get the pin to actually line up with the hole on the outside. Once it's partially lined up with the hole, the pin through the hole, you go ahead and take a hammer and hit the pin on the head until it's flush with the back of the caliper, and then just repeat the process for the bottom one. Then we can go ahead and straighten out the rotor and caliper. And we can go ahead and remove our lug nut, because now the brake pads and the caliper are holding the rotor in place. Then we can install the wheel. And then lastly, make sure you torque these lugs down to 150 foot-pounds. Just repeat the process on the other side. A few last things to mention after you brakes on any car. Make sure you pump the brake pedal a couple times to get the calipers refilled with fluid to refresh the brakes to the discs. Otherwise you won't have any brake pressure when you initially go to back the car out and you might hit something.